Where am I? There I am. Okay. Hello. Not quite ready yet. Where am I? Oh. Shh. Quiet me. Quiet. I always forget to mute that when I'm running late. I was busy putting my face on. I didn't get to do it this morning because I was running late this morning too. Okay. I'm not really ready, but that's too bad. I don't have a drink. It's very upsetting. Yeah, I'll go get a drink. 1 second. Whatever. I'm gonna go get a drink. Okay. Okay. Sponsored by Calypso. No, it isn't. No, I'm not. I wish I was. This stuff is good. It's a southern peach lemonade. Though so far, all the lemonades I've tried are really good. Nom, nom, nom. Okay. I need to catch my breath for a minute. Okay. Whew. It's hard work walking all the way over there. Okay. So, hello fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny and welcome to the stream. Welcome back to Storytime Saturday. This is Storytime Saturday number 36 with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, chapters 13 and 14. Okay. So we will get to the reading. But I want to have a tiny bit of a discussion first. And this probably will feel out of the blue for some people. Or anybody. If anybody watches this, I don't know. How do I start this? So I'll explain. I'll explain my thinking. The background of my thinking. Okay, so I was getting ready for Halloween last weekend. I was shopping and I bought a fun witch's hat and a fun wig. And I'm excited for my Halloween stream on Monday, and I'll be dressing up as my profile pic. Which is really fun. I found a wig and a hat that match my profile, sort of, and I'm really excited about that. But also, I'm doing a church event tomorrow. We're having Fall Fest at my church. And that would be the one day that I'd be able to dress up for church. I always dress up for church. I meant dress Halloween-y for church. And so I was like, oh yeah, I can dress up in my witch costume, it'll be great. And then I stopped for a second and I was like, would that be acceptable to dress up like a witch for church? Because if you don't know, because some of you might not know, witchcraft is a no-no in my religion. It's we don't touch that. We don't go near that. It's not good. It's not good stuff. And I was like, well, I should be able to dress up like a witch because when you're a Christian, you have the freedom of Christ, which means you're free to, do good things within reason. You're able to live life to the fullest within reason. There's still boundaries, but I am not a witch, and I don't actually practice witchcraft. All I want to do is dress up as a witch for fun, one day, and I have the freedom in Christ to do that. But at the same time, I don't want to make other people at church who aren't comfortable with that be uncomfortable. I also want to keep the peace and make a safe and comfortable environment for everyone, especially since I am on the hospitality team. And I'm going to be working as a floater, we call it, on the hospitality team tomorrow. And we're potentially, through this event, we're going to get a lot of new people. And so it was a real question. It was like, I got to balance my freedom in Christ with my desire to be, to keep the peace with everybody and to think about how other people feel. And so I posted the question on social media, on my private social media, and I had somebody from my church send me a podcast that explained the background to Halloween, and it essentially gave reasons why Christians shouldn't celebrate Halloween. And it wasn't just that. It also said, basically, I'm being unfair. What the podcast said basically was Christians should be careful about Halloween, I think is the fair answer, description of that. I didn't agree with everything the podcast said. I feel like for the most part, Halloween is pretty harmless. I think the majority of people who celebrate Halloween are people who just want to celebrate, just want to dress up and have Halloween costume parties and eat candy and take their kids out trick-or-treating. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, even as a Christian, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Even if you know the history behind Halloween and what the holiday really is and what it really means, even if you know all that stuff, I don't think there's any harm in dressing up and going to eat candy. I don't see that. But anyway, I mean, all that to say, the podcast did make me think about it. And like, my conclusion was, I'm not going to wear my costume to church because I don't want to confuse people and make them think that we're a church that also does witchcraft. Like, I don't want to confuse new people. And the explanation that I gave in my post was, I know my heart and I know why I'm dressing up, but they don't know, and that's not fair to them, and I don't want to confuse them. So I will keep my costume at home and I'll wear it for my live stream. So then I was thinking, well, do my viewers know my heart? Do they know why I feel comfortable wearing that costume despite being a Christian and not practicing witchcraft? And while I think the majority of you are not confused at all, there might be someone, especially there might be a Christian who's watching my channel who might be confused. And so this message is more for Christians than anybody else. Just in case you were confused, I want to be completely open about what my channel is, and what my faith is. This isn't supposed to be a religious channel. This isn't supposed to be a religious stream, but I am I'm a completely all-in, sold out, ready to end it all in love with Jesus, okay? And so when you feel that way about Jesus, you're going to talk about him. This is the way it's going to go. Like, that's not the point of my channel, but like, I'm unapologetic about it. It's going to come out. So, I mean, if you don't want to hear this, sorry, not sorry. You're free to watch somebody else. I don't care. This is really important to me. Or if you're watching this, and it's no longer live, feel free to skip over it. But I'm just gonna give this little PSA that yes, I am completely all in Christian, unapologetic about it. Jesus is the Savior of the world. End of story. No questions asked. He's not just for Christians. He's for everybody. Anybody can be a Christian. Anybody. It's not the kind of religion where you're like, oh, I don't think that religion's for me. No, it is. It is for you and for me and for everyone. It's universal. I unapologetically believe Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, the only way to everlasting life, the absolute only way. And that might offend some people. Oh well. Honestly, oh well. If you don't believe that way, that's totally okay. I still love you. I still want to be your friend. You're still welcome on my channel. Let's play video games together. I'm hoping that you change your mind, but it's totally cool if you don't. But that's what I believe. That being said, I don't practice Wicca, and I don't encourage the practice of Wicca. Because, that the Bible, I believe that the Bible is inerrant, completely God-breathed, and it says witchcraft is a no-no, and I fully believe it. I trust him. That being said, though, if you are Wiccan and you do practice Wicca, that's totally okay with me. I am so glad you're here. Please stay. Don't feel intimidated. Don't feel like you don't belong here, because you totally do. I would love to introduce you to Jesus, but if you're not interested, that's totally okay. I don't agree with your viewpoints. I don't agree with your religious practices, but I'm willing to bet you don't agree with mine either, and that is totally okay. That is 100% okay. That is not what this channel is for. This channel isn't to recruit you, though I'd love to do that. It's not about that. I'd love to still play video games with you. You will not get any judgment from me, no persecution from me. You've been persecuted enough from one persecuted faith to another. We're not here for that. We don't want to do that. So I'm so glad you're here. And I will say that I actually am very interested in Wicca. As weird as that sounds, I don't practice it, and I never ever will. But I do like the study of it, if that makes sense. I have the equivalent of my interest in Wicca is how some people have an interest in Greek mythology. There's tons of people who are really fascinated with Greek mythology, and they love hearing the stories and learning about the stories behind the constellations and things like that. But that doesn't mean that they worship Zeus or Artemis or Athena or anybody. That doesn't mean that they actually worship those gods. They just like the stories. That's how I feel about Wicca. I like learning about the rituals. I like learning about astrology. Astrology really fascinated me as a kid. I find alchemy really interesting, and ancient runes and all these things. So I'm fascinated by your culture if you are Wicca. And so please, don't feel offended or threatened like I hate you. I don't. I'm actually very fascinated with you. I actually know a few Wiccans. I know a couple of them, and they're very unique people. They're just really fascinating to me. So don't feel inferior, because you're not. You're absolutely not. You're so welcome here. I feel like I was going to say something else in that vein. But that being said, apart from that, the reason why I say, hello, fellow witches and wizards, and the reason why my profile pic is a witch, and why I'm going to be dressing up as a witch on Monday for my Halloween live stream, is because I am interested in witchcraft from a student standpoint. But also because I love magic, and I love witches from a storytelling aspect. The theme of my channel, the overall theme of my channel, is storytelling, particularly in fantasy and magic. It has a big, strong Harry Potter theme. My name is based off of Harry Potter. We're reading Harry Potter. And when I say hello, fellow witches and wizards, and when I dress up like a witch, and when I do things like that, I am participating in my favorite stories. When I talk about witches and wizards, I talk about witches and wizards from Harry Potter or from Chronicles of Narnia, the good ones, not the White Witch. And I'm talking about Lord of the Rings. I'm talking about fun fantasy magic, which is very, very different from Wicca. Not the same thing at all, which Wiccans will agree. They would even argue that Halloween itself isn't Wicca. In fact, the name Halloween was the holiday was called Halloween to reverse the actual Wicca holiday, which is Samhain. So if you are Wicca, please have a happy and safe Samhain. I've been pronouncing it wrong for the longest time because it's spelled a little weird. But anyway, so the witch I characterize myself after isn't even truly Wiccan anyway. But in case somebody was confused, I just wanted you to know that I don't practice Wicca. I don't encourage the practice of Wicca, but I am interested in the study of Wicca, and I just like magic and witches from a storytelling fantasy worldview, particularly Harry Potter. And when I say those things and participate in that aspect of witchcraft, I'm talking about just Harry Potter, essentially. I'm not talking about actual witchcraft in real life. Just in case you were confused. I don't think anybody was, but just in case. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. That's not why I'm here. I don't want to do that. I might be canceled after this stream. Who knows? I'm counting the days, so I'm canceled. I should be canceled at some point. But I want to be truth, and I want to tell you. I want to tell you my heart and what I truly believe. That I truly love Jesus, and I follow after Jesus, and I do my best. And if you don't follow after Jesus, that's totally okay. You're still okay with me. I still want to be your friend. So, yeah, I did not intend for that to be 15 minutes long. Oh, that was not the goal. And I'll reiterate some of this on Monday when I'm actually dressed up like a witch. Don't want any confusion, but I'm going to keep it much briefer. Briefer, yeah, that's the word. Okay, so, okay, so we're reading Harry Potter. That's why we're here. First, I will say this. Please feel free to talk in the chat, join the discussion. This is a discussion, not a narration. Please talk to me, and I will talk to you. If this is no longer live, feel free to talk in the comment section. I respond to those. And if you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber and turn on notification bell so you can be notified the next time I upload, next time I go live. Click the like button as well. I don't know if I said that. I will be going live Monday for Halloween. It'll be 5:30 in the evening. So if you're not trick-or-treating, if you have nowhere to go, why does YouTube do that? Am I back? Am I back? Why is my... This isn't helpful. Why is my stream struggling? I don't understand what's happening. It says my audio bitrate isn't right. I don't understand. It always says that. Stream is healthy. Stream health is excellent. Yeah, sure it is. Oh my god. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's my internet or something? I don't know. Shouldn't be. Okay. Well, it seems to be working now. Please, Jesus. Let it work. For a second, I thought YouTube was trying to take me down. Alright. Not today, Satan. Not today. Okay, it seems to be working now. Okay, I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. Okay, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I'll be live streaming Monday. I'll be playing, I was supposed to say Harry Potter, Nancy Drew, The Curse of Blackmore Manor. I haven't done Nancy Drew in a long time on my channel, so I want to get back to that for a little bit. I'm going to play the whole game in one night. Hopefully it doesn't take me that long. It shouldn't. I've played that game so many times. I know what I'm doing. I say. What else? What am I doing? What's next? I feel like I gotta hurry before my stream crashes. uh, and then A Plague Tale on Friday, and more Harry Potter on Saturday. If you want to know what my stream schedule is, you can follow me on Twitter, or you can just watch my posts. I can post on YouTube now. I don't know if that's something everyone can do, or if I somehow earned that privilege. I hope that I earned that privilege. That'd be so great. I'm getting more views and more likes than I'm used to, so it's pretty exciting. So I will be posting my stream schedule right on YouTube, in addition to posting it on Twitter. But you still follow me on Twitter if you want to. I don't just post my schedule on there. I post other things too. I also have an Instagram and a TikTok in the description. Also, I have a Patreon. You want to be on Patreon because I'm going to be posting a video to my Patreon. You're going to get extra content from me on Patreon in addition to my writing. I am a writer, so I write short stories and poetry and essays and the like, and it's all on there. There's some free stuff too, so if you can't be a patron, you can read the free stuff that's on there. But I just posted my Halloween story. It's spooky and fun. I just posted that. So if you become a patron for $4 a month, you can read that right now. Link in the description. And you'll be able to view a special video I'm making about it. I'm going to make a special audiobook with visuals. I contracted an artist to make art for me. So there's going to be art and fun music. It's going to be great. I'm going to be posting that either tomorrow or Monday. But stay tuned for that, and I will post a trailer for it on my channel as well, so look forward to that. Also, I'm working on a big project that I was supposed to post this week, but YouTube is being a pain about it. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I didn't know it was going to be this difficult. So, it's going to be a little bit longer, so hold on. Yeah. TikTok, Instagram, yeah. I think that's it. I think that's everything I wanted to say. Okay, so recap from last week. Last week, we finally made it to Hogwarts. We read Aboard the Hogwarts Express. Mad-Eye Moody experienced an intruder in his house. Wink, wonk, wink, wonk. Everybody keeps hinting at something special happening this year. We run into Malfoy, gross. We get to Hogwarts and Dumbledore talks about the Triwizard Tournament. Peeves makes a mess in the Great Hall with water balloons. Everybody's wet. The Sorting Hat does his song. Everybody's upset because you have to be of age in order to be a part of the Triwizard Tournament, but that is because there's been a lot of deaths, and they're trying to prevent that. Neville's foot gets stuck in the sinking stair. Wink, wonk, wink, wonk. Not winking, really. Just moving my mouth. But that's going to be important for later, that step. And now we're on chapter 13, Mad-Eye Moody. Chapter 13, Mad-Eye Moody. The storm had blown itself out by the following morning. Though the ceiling in the great hall was still gloomy, heavy clouds of pewter gray swirling overhead as Harry, Ron, and Hermione examined their new course schedules at breakfast. A few seats along, Fred, George, and Lee Jordan were discussing magical methods of aging themselves and bluffing their way into the Triwizard Tournament. "Today's not bad, outside all morning," said Ron, who was running his finger down the Monday column of his schedule. "Herbology with the Hufflepuffs and Cat of Magical Creatures. Damn it, we're still with the Slytherins." "Double divination this afternoon," Harry groaned, looking down. Divination was his least favorite subject, apart from potions. Professor Trelawney kept predicting Harry's death, which he found extremely annoying. You should have given it up like me, shouldn't you? Said Hermione briskly, buttering herself some toast. Then you'd do something sensible, like arithmancy. You're eating again, I noticed, said Ron, watching Hermione adding liberal amounts of jam to her toast, too. I've decided there are better ways of making a stand about elf rights, said Hermione haughtily. Yeah, and you were hungry, said Ron, grinning. There was a sudden rustling noise above them, and 100 owls came soaring through the open windows, carrying the morning mail. Instinctively, Harry looked up, but there was no sign of white among the mass of brown and gray, because Harry is the only snowy white owl, apparently. The owls circled the tables, looking for the people to whom their letters and packages were addressed. A large tawny owl soared down to Neville Longbottom and deposited a parcel into his lap. Neville almost always forgot to pack something. On the other side of the hall, Draco Malfoy's eagle owl had landed on his shoulder, carrying what looked like his usual supply of sweets and cakes from home. Trying to ignore the sinking feeling of disappointment in his stomach, Harry returned to his porridge. Was it possible that something had happened to Hedwig and that Sirius hadn't even gotten his letter? Hadn't even got his letter? I don't know if that's proper English, but whatever. I think he's just waiting for the right time to send it, and he's just looking for another owl to send it, I think. I think that's all. Like, nothing's wrong with Sirius. He's also on the move, so it's not a surprise. His preoccupation lasted all the way across the sodden vegetable patch until they arrived in Greenhouse 3, but here he was distracted by Professor Sprout showing the class the ugliest plants Harry had ever seen. Indeed, they looked less like plants than thick black giant slugs protruding vertically out of the soil. Each was squirming slightly and had a number of large, shiny swellings upon it, which appeared to be full of liquid. Are these Bubbatubbers? Bubbatubbers! I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's probably Bubbotubers. Bubbotubers. I've always pronounced it Bubbatubbers. Because they're in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the game. I was supposed to say the PC game. It is a PC game, but it's also on Xbox and PlayStation. And I played it on Xbox. Love that game. Lots of people hate that game, but I actually love it. And Bubbatubbers are in it. Bubbatubbers, Boobatubbers, Boobatubers. I don't know how to pronounce it. Oh no, is my stream screwing up again? Oh, things seem to be fine. No, it's fine. It's just the preview that's messing up. Anyway. Bubbatubbers, Professor Sprout told them briskly. They need squeezing. You will collect the pus. The what? Said Seamus Finnegan, sounding revolted. Pus, Finnegan, pus, said Professor Sprout, and it's extremely valuable, so don't waste it. You will collect the pus, I say, in these bottles. Wear your dragonhide gloves. It can do funny things to the skin when undiluted Bubbletubber pus. I don't think I read that right. It can do funny things to the skin when undiluted Bubbletubber pus. Squeezing the Bubbletubber was disgusting, but oddly satisfying. As each swelling was popped, a large amount of thick yellowish-green liquid burst forth, which smelled strongly of petrol. They caught it in the bottles, as Professor Sprout had indicated, and by the end of the lesson had collected several pints. This'll keep Madame Pomfrey happy, said Professor Sprout, stoppering the last bottle with a cork. An excellent remedy for the most stubborn forms of acne, Bubbletubber pus. Should stop students resorting to desperate measures to rid themselves of pimples. Like poor Eloise Midgen, said Hannah Abbott, a Hufflepuff, in a hushed voice. She tried to curse us off. Silly girl, said Professor Sprout, shaking her head. But Madame Pomfrey fixed her nose back on in the end. A booming bell echoed from the castle across the wet grounds, signaling the end of the lesson, and the class separated, the Hufflepuffs climbing the stone steps for transfiguration, and the Gryffindors heading in the other direction, down the sloping lawn toward Hagrid's small wooden cabin, which stood on the edge of the forbidden forest. Hagrid was standing outside his hut, one hand on the collar of his enormous black boarhound, Fang. There were several open wooden crates on the ground at his feet, and Fang was whimpering and straining at his collar, apparently keen to investigate the contents more closely. As they drew nearer, an odd rattling noise reached their ears, punctuated by what sounded like minor explosions. These are also in the game. Very, very fun. Morning, Hagrid said, grinning at Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Better wait for the Slytherins. They won't want to miss this. Blast-ended Scroots! Come again? Said Ron. Hagrid pointed down into the crates. Squealed Lavender Brown, jumping backward. Just about summed up the blast-headed Scroots, in Harry's opinion. They looked like deformed, shellless lobsters, horribly pale and slimy looking, with legs sticking out in very odd places, and no visible heads. There were about 100 of them in each crate, each about 6 inches long, crawling over one another, bumping blindly into the sides of the boxes. They were giving off a very powerful smell of rotting fish. Every now and then sparks would fly out of the end of a screw, and with a small foot, it would be propelled forward several inches. Only just hatched, said Hagrid proudly, so you'll be able to raise them yourselves. Thought we'd make it a bit of a project of it. And why would we want to raise them? Said a cold voice. I think that's a fair question. I don't think you should say it so meanly, but that's actually a good question. The Slytherins had arrived. The speaker was Draco Malfoy. Crabbe and Goyle were chuckling appreciatively at his words. Hagrid looked stumped at the question. I mean, what did they do? Asked Malfoy. What is the point of them? Hagrid opened his mouth, apparently thinking hard. There was a few seconds' pause. Then he said roughly, That's the next lesson, Malfoy. You're just feeding them today. Now you want to try them a few different things. I've never had them before. Not sure what they'll go for. I got ant eggs and frog's livers and a bit of grass snake. Just try them out with a bit of each. So he doesn't even know what they eat. They're brand new creatures. In fact, I'm pretty sure he bred them. I'm pretty sure. First pus, and now this, muttered Seamus. Nothing but deep affection for Hagrid could have made Harry, Ron, and Hermione pick up squelchy handfuls of frog liver and lower them into the crates to tempt the blast-ended Scroots. Harry couldn't suppress the suspicion that the whole thing was entirely pointless, because the Scroots didn't seem to have mouths. Ouch! Yelled Dean Thomas after about 10 minutes. It got me! Hagrid hurried over to him, looking anxious. Its end exploded, said Dean angrily, showing Hagrid a burn on his hand. Yeah, that can happen when they blast off, said Hagrid, nodding. Said Lavender Brown again. Hagrid, what's that pointy thing on it? Some of them have got stings, said Hagrid enthusiastically. Lavender quickly withdrew her hand from the box. I reckon they're the males. The females have got sort of sucker things on their bellies. I think they might be to suck blood. Well, I certainly see why we're trying to keep them alive, said Malfoy sarcastically. Who wouldn't want pets that can burn, sting, and bite all at once? He's actually got a point. Yeah. Just because they're not very pretty doesn't mean they're not useful, Hermione snapped. Dragon blood's amazing magical. Amazing. Bleh, what is this? Dragon blood's. Shouldn't it be dragon's blood? I don't know. Dragon's blood's amazingly magical. But you wouldn't want a dragon for a pet, would you? Well, Harry and Ron grinned at Hagrid, who gave them a furtive smile from behind his bushy beard. Hagrid would have liked nothing better than a pet dragon, as Harry, Ron, and Hermione knew only too well. He had owned one for a brief period during their first year, a vicious Norwegian ridgeback by the name of Norbert. Hagrid simply loved monstrous creatures. The more lethal, the better. Well, at least the Scroots are small, said Ron as they made their way back up to the castle for lunch an hour later. They are now, said Hermione in an exasperated voice. But once Hagrid's found out what they eat, I expect they'll be 6 feet long. Well, that won't matter if they turn out to cure sicknesses or something, will it? Said Ron, grinning slyly at her. You know perfectly well I only said that to shut Malfoy up, said Hermione. As a matter of fact, I think he's right. The best thing to do would be to stamp out the lot of them before they start attacking us all. Wow, savage! That's brutal. They sat down at the Gryffindor table and helped themselves to lamb chops and potatoes. Hermione began to eat so fast that Harry and Ron stared at her. Is this the new stand on elf rights? Said Ron. You're going to make yourself puke instead. No, said Hermione, with as much dignity as she could muster with her mouth bulging with sprouts. I just want to get to the library. What? Said Ron in disbelief. Hermione, it's the first day back. We haven't got any homework yet. Hermione shrugged and continued to shovel down her food as though she had not eaten for days. Then she leapt to her feet, said, See you at dinner, and departed at high speed. To the library! When the bell rang to signal the start of afternoon lessons, Harry and Ron set off for North Tower, where, at the top of a tightly spiraling staircase, a silver stepladder led to a circular trapdoor in the ceiling, and the room where Professor Trelawney lived. The familiar sweet perfume spreading from the fire met their nostrils as they emerged at the top of the stepladder. As ever, the curtains were all closed. The circular room was bathed in a dim reddish light cast by the many lamps, which were all draped with scarves and shawls. Harry and Ron walked through the mass of occupied chintz chairs and poufs that cluttered the room and sat down at the same small circular table. Good day, said the misty voice of Professor Trelawney right behind Harry, making him jump. A very thin woman with enormous glasses that made her eyes appear far too large for her face, Professor Trelawney was peering down at Harry with the tragic expression she always wore whenever she saw him. The usual large amount of beads, chains, and bangles glittered upon her person in the firelight. You are preoccupied, my dear, she said mournfully to Harry. My inner eye sees past your brave face to the troubled soul within. And I regret to say that your worries are not baseless. I see difficult times ahead for you, alas, most difficult. I fear the thing you dread will indeed come to pass, and perhaps sooner than you think. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. Ron rolled his eyes at Harry, who looked stonily back. Professor Trelawney swept past them and seated herself in a large winged armchair before the fire. Facing the class, Lavender Brown and Parvati Patil, who deeply admired Professor Trelawney, were sitting on poufs very close to her. My dears, it is time for us to consider the stars, she said. The movements of the planets and the mysterious portents they reveal only to those who understand the steps of the celestial dance. Human destiny may be deciphered by the planetary rays which intermingle. But Harry's thoughts had drifted. The perfumed fire always made him feel sleepy and dull-witted, and Professor Trelawney's rambling. That R really looked like a T to me. Rambling talks on fortune-telling never held him exactly spellbound, though he couldn't help think about what she had just said to him. I fear the thing you dread will indeed come to pass. But Hermione was right, Harry thought irritably. Professor Trelawney really was an old fraud. He wasn't dreading anything at the moment at all. Well, unless you counted his fears that Sirius had been caught. But what did Professor Trelawney know? He had long since come to the conclusion that her brand of fortune-telling was really no more than lucky guesswork and a spooky manner. Except, of course, for that time at the end of last term, when she had made the prediction about Voldemort rising again, and Dumbledore himself had said that he thought that trance had been genuine when Harry had described it to him. Harry, Ron muttered. What? Harry looked around. The whole class was staring at him. He sat up straight. He had been almost dozing off, lost in the heat and his thoughts. I was saying, my dear, that you were clearly born under the baleful influence of Saturn, said Professor Trelawney, a faint note of resentment in her voice at the fact that he had obviously not been hanging on her words. Born under... what? Sorry? Said Harry. No, he was born... What planet is July under? The end of July, beginning of August. What house is that in? I don't know. Do I even know what mine is under? I'm an Aquarius, so I mean that would be the house. But what planets are associated with Aquarius? I forget. Isn't it? I don't know. Huh. Let me see. So let me see. Astrology chart. Astrology Celeste. Is this what I want? I mean, no. That's not what I want. Zodiac planets. I'm looking for the zodiac planets. Because each zodiac is under a certain... Oh, the sun. Leo. That's... Harry is under the sun. That's right. Let me find mine. And some planets have multiple astrological signs. Mine is Uranus. Oh, that's great. Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't follow any of that, but the study of it's interesting, as I was explaining earlier. I am interested in what some people do believe in as far as the zodiac goes. So Harry was actually born in the house of the sun, and I guess, was born under Uranus. Yeah. Okay. So that's the information I was looking for. Saturn, dear. The planet Saturn, said Professor Trelawney, sounding definitely irritated that he wasn't riveted by this news. I was saying that Saturn was surely in a position of power in the heavens at the moment of your birth. Your dark hair, your mean stature, tragic losses so young in life. I think I am right in saying, my dear, that you were born in midwinter. No, said Harry. I was born in July. Ron hastily turned his laugh into a hacking cough. Half an hour later, each of them had been given a complicated circular chart and was attempting to fill in the position of the planets at their moment of birth. It was dull work, requiring much consultation of timetables and calculation of angles. I've got 2 Neptunes here, said Harry after a while, frowning down at his piece of parchment. That can't be right, can it? Ah, said Ron, imitating Professor Trelawney's mystical whisper. When 2 Neptunes appear in the sky, it is a sure sign that a midget in glasses is being born, Harry. Seamus and Dean, who were working nearby, sniggered loudly, though not loudly enough to mask the excited squeals from Lavender Brown. Okay. Stupid. I always pronounce Uranus, but you can pronounce it another way, and I don't prefer to pronounce it the other way for obvious reasons, but I'm going to pronounce it that way because that's what makes this joke funny. Okay. Oh, Professor, look, I think I've got an unaspected planet. Ooh, which one's that, Professor? It is Uranus, my dear, said Professor Trelawney, peering down at the chart. Can I have a look at Uranus too, Lavender? Said Ron. So stupid. Most unfortunately, Professor Trelawney heard him, and it was this perhaps that made her give them so much homework at the end of the class. Man, that's good. A detailed analysis of the way the planetary movements in the coming month will affect you, with reference to your personal chart. I thought it was Harry or Ron. Let me read that again. A detailed analysis of the way the planetary movements in the coming month will affect you, with reference to your personal chart, she snapped, sounding much more like Professor McGonagall than her usual airy-fairy self. Airy-fairy. It really says that. I want it ready to hand in next Monday, and no excuses. Miserable old bat, said Ron bitterly as they joined the crowds descending the staircases back to the Great Hall and dinner. That'll take all weekend, that will. Lots of homework, said Hermione brightly, catching up with them. Professor Vector didn't give us any at all. Well, bully for Professor Vector, said Ron moodily. They reached the entrance hall, which was packed with people, queuing for dinner. They had just joined the end of the line when a loud voice rang out behind them. What the heck is happening? Oh. Weasley! Hey, Weasley! Harry, Ron, and Hermione turned. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle were standing there, each looking thoroughly pleased about something. Oh, no. I don't remember what it's about, but I know it's not good. What? Said Ron shortly. Your dad's in the paper, Weasley, said Malfoy, brandishing a copy of the Daily Prophet and speaking very loudly so that everyone in the packed entrance hall can hear. Listen to this. Further mistakes at the Ministry of Magic. It seems as though the Ministry of Magic's troubles are not yet at an end, writes Rita Skeeter, special correspondent. Recently under fire for its poor crowd control at the Quidditch World Cup and still unable to account for the disappearance of one of its witches, the Ministry was plunged into fresh embarrassment yesterday by the antics of Arnold Weasley of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office. Malfoy looked up. Imagine them not even getting his name right, Weasley. It's almost as though he's a complete non-entity, isn't he? He crowed. Everyone in the entrance hall was listening now. Malfoy straightened the paper with a flourish and read on. Arnold Weasley, who was charged with possession of a flying car 2 years ago, was yesterday involved in a tussle with several Muggle lawkeepers, policemen, over a number of highly aggressive dustbins. Mr. Weasley appears to have rushed to the aid of Mad-Eye Moody, the aged ex-Auror, who retired from the Ministry when no longer able to tell the difference between a handshake and an attempted murder. Unsurprisingly, Mr. Weasley found, upon arrival at Mr. Moody's heavily guarded house, and Mr. Moody had once again raised a false alarm. Mr. Weasley was forced to modify several memories before he could escape from the policeman, but refused to answer Daily Prophet questions about why he had involved the Ministry in such an undignified and potentially embarrassing scene. And there's a picture, Weasley, said Malfoy, flipping the paper over and holding it up. A picture of your parents outside their house, if you can call it a house. Your mother could do with losing a bit of weight, couldn't she? Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let me at him. No. If anybody ever said that about my mother, they'd be dead. They'd be dead. Oh, no. No. Whew. Sorry. Okay. Ron was shaking with fury. Everyone was staring at him. Get stuffed, Malfoy, said Harry. Come on, Ron. Oh, yeah, you were staying with them this summer, weren't you, Potter? Sneered Malfoy. So tell me, is his mother really that porky, or is it just the picture? You know your mother, Malfoy? Said Harry. Both he and Hermione had grabbed the back of Ron's robes to stop him from launching himself at Malfoy. That expression she's got, like she's got dung under her nose. Has she always looked like that? Or was it just because you were with her? Oh, you don't like that? You don't like that? Well, maybe you should Maybe you shouldn't say that about other people's mothers. Jeez, I don't understand people. Malfoy's pale face went slightly pink. Don't you dare insult my mother, Potter. Keep your fat mouth shut, then, said Harry, turning away. Bang! No, wait! No! Oh, I totally forgot about this part! I didn't realize that was here! Oh, yeah! That's exciting! Bang! Several people screamed. Harry felt something white-hot graze the side of his face. He plunged his hand into his robes for his wand, but before he'd even touched it, he heard a second loud bang, and a roar that echoed through the entrance hall. Oh, no you don't, laddie! Harry spun around. Professor Moody was limping down the marble staircase. His wand was out, and it was pointing right at a pure white ferret, which was shivering on the stone-flagged floor, exactly where Malfoy had been standing. There was a terrified silence in the entrance hall. Nobody but Moody was moving a muscle. Moody turned to look at Harry. At least his normal eye was looking at Harry. The other one was pointing into the back of his head. Did he get you? Moody growled. His voice was low and gravely. No, said Harry. Missed. Leave it, Moody shouted. Leave what? Harry said, bewildered. Not you, him. Moody growled, jerking his thumb over his shoulder at Crabbe, who was just frozen, about to pick up the white ferret. It seemed that Moody's rolling eye was magical and could see out of the back of his head. Moody started to limp toward Crabbe, Goyle, and the ferret, which gave a terrified squeak and took off, streaking toward the dungeons. I don't think so, roared Moody, pointing his wand at the ferret again. It flew 10 feet into the air, fell with a smack on the floor, and then bounced upward once more. I don't like people who attack when their opponent's back's turned, growled Moody at the ferret, bouncing higher and higher, squealing in pain. Stinking, cowardly, scummy thing to do. It is, truly. The ferret flew through the air, its legs and tail flailing helplessly. Never do that again, said Moody, speaking each word as the ferret hit the stone floor and bounced upward again. Professor Moody, said a shocked voice. Professor McGonagall was coming down the marble staircase with her arms full of books. Hello, Professor McGonagall, said Moody calmly, bouncing the ferret still higher. What are you doing? Said Professor McGonagall, her eyes following the bouncing ferret's progress through the air. Teaching, said Moody. Moody, is that a student? Shrieked Professor McGonagall, the book spilling out of his arms. Yep, said Moody. No! Cried Professor McGonagall, running down the stairs and pulling out her wand. A moment later, with a loud snapping noise, Draco Malfoy had reappeared, lying in a heap on the floor with his sleek blonde hair all over his now brilliantly pink face. He got to his feet, wincing. Moody, we never use transfiguration as a punishment, said Professor McGonagall weakly. Surely Professor Dumbledore told you that. He might have mentioned it, yeah, said Moody, scratching his chin unconcernedly. But I thought a good sharp shock. We give detentions, Moody. We'll speak to the offender's head of house. I'll do that then, said Moody, staring at Malfoy with great dislike. This is glorious. Malfoy, whose pale eyes were still watering with pain and humiliation, looked malevolently up at Moody and muttered something in which the words, my father, were distinguishable. Oh, Moody, yes. I know. Oh, there's always like that. There's that weird feeling. It's like you love Moody, but you know it's not really him. And so it's like you just want to be like, yes, Moody's awesome. Wait, this isn't really Moody. I probably shouldn't be cheering. What do I do? For the sake of consistency, just be like, yeah, Moody's great, because Moody is great. Even though this isn't Moody, this is still probably how he would really act if it really was him. Oh yeah, said Moody, quietly, limping forward a few steps, the dull clunk of his wooden leg echoing around the hall. Well, I know your father, old boy. You tell him Moody's keeping a close eye on his son. You tell him that from me. Now your head of house will be Snape, will it? Yes, said Malfoy resentfully. Another old friend. I love it so much. Growled Moody. I've been looking forward to a chat with old Snape. Come on, you. And he seized Malfoy's upper arm and marched him off toward the dungeons. Professor McGonagall stared anxiously after them for a few moments, then waved her wand at her fallen books, causing them to soar up into the air and back into her arms. "Don't talk to me," Ron said quietly to Harry and Hermione as they sat down on the Gryffindor table for a few minutes later, surrounded by excited talk on all sides about what had just happened. "Why not?" said Hermione, surprised. "Because I want to fix that in my memory forever," said Ron, his eyes closed and an uplifted expression on his face. "Draco Malfoy, the amazing bouncing ferret." Oh man, this is one of the best parts of this book. Oh, yeah. Harry and Hermione both laughed, and Hermione began doling beef casserole onto each of their plates. "He could have really hurt Malfoy, though," she said. "It was good, really, that Professor McGonagall stopped it." "Hermione," said Ron furiously, his eyes snapping open again, "you're ruining the best moment of my life." I can't. Ron and these absolute bangers. I just love it. Hermione made an impatient noise and began to eat at top speed again. "Don't tell me you're going back to the library this evening," said Harry, watching her. "Got to," said Hermione thickly. "Loads to do." "But you told us, Professor Vector—" "It's not schoolwork," she said. Within 5 minutes she had cleared her plate and departed. No sooner had she gone than her seat was taken by Fred Weasley. "Moody," he said. "How cool is he?" "Beyond cool," said George, sitting down opposite Fred. "Super cool," said the twins' best friend, Lee Jordan, sliding into the seat beside George. "We had him this afternoon," he told Harry and Ron. "What was it like?" said Harry eagerly. Fred, George, and Lee exchanged looks full of meaning. "Never had a lesson like it," said Fred. "He knows, man," said Lee. "Knows what?" said Ron, leaning forward. "Knows what it's like to be out there doing it," said George impressively. "Doing what?" said Harry. "Fighting the dark arts," said Fred. "He's seen it all," said George. "Amazing," said Lee. Ron dived into his bag for his schedule. "We haven't got him till Thursday," he said in a disappointed voice. "Well, Thursday is next chapter. But we're going to take a 15-minute break first. And then when we come back, we'll read Chapter 14, The Unforgivable Curses. I hope you're enjoying this. I definitely am. I didn't realize that was this chapter, The Amazing Bouncing Ferret. One of the best parts of the book, for sure. Okay, so please feel free to talk in the chat or in the comment section down below. Also leave a like on the video and become a subscriber if you're not subscribed already, and turn on notifications so you can be notified the next time I go live, the next time I upload. Excuse me. I'll be going live next weekend. If you want to know when, you might see a post about it on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon if you'd like to support me as a content creator. And I also I have stories on there if you'd like to read those. I have free ones on there too if you can't afford to become a patron. And I also have a TikTok and an Instagram, link in the description. And I'll be back after 15 minutes. Eek. Sorry. I was finishing up my dishes. That's what I do during the intermission. Okay. Let's see how long this chapter is. Sorry. I was finishing up my dishes. Shh. Quiet. Keep forgetting to mute that. Yes, it's not too bad. That's pretty average. Okay. Ooh. Jeez. My hair is falling out of my head. 1 second. Ah. Okay. Chapter 14. The Unforgivable Curses. The next 2 days passed without great incident, unless you counted Neville melting his 6th cauldron in potions. Professor Snape, who seemed to have attained new levels of vindictiveness over the summer, gave Neville detention, and Neville returned from it in a state of nervous collapse, having been made to disembowel a barrel full of horned toads. Ew. What? You know why Snape's in such a foul mood, don't you? Said Ron to Harry as they watched Hermione teaching Neville a scouring charm to remove the frog guts from under his fingernails. Yeah, said Harry. Moody. It was common knowledge that Snape really wanted the dark arts job, and he had now failed to get it for the 4th year running. Snape had disliked all of their previous dark arts teachers and shown it, but he seemed strangely wary of displaying overt animosity to Mad-Eye Moody. Indeed, whenever Harry saw the two of them together at mealtimes or when they passed in the corridors, he had the distinct impression that Snape was avoiding Moody's eye, whether magical or normal. I reckon Snape's a bit scared of him, you know, Harry said thoughtfully. Imagine if Moody turned Snape into a horned toad, said Ron, his eyes misting over, and bounced him all over his dungeon. The Gryffindor 4th years were looking forward to Moody's first lesson so much that they arrived early on Thursday lunchtime and queued up outside his classroom before the bell had even rung. The only person missing was Hermione, who turned up just in time for the lesson. Been in the library, Harry finished her sentence for her. Come on, quick, or we won't get decent seats. They hurried into 3 chairs right in front of the teacher's desk, took out their copies of The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection, and waited, unusually quiet. Soon they heard Moody's distinctive clunking footsteps coming down the corridor, and he entered the room, looking as strange and frightening as ever. They could just see his clawed wooden foot protruding from underneath his robes. You can put those away, he growled, stumping over to his desk and sitting down. Those books. You won't need them. They returned the books to their bags, Ron looking excited. Moody took out a register, shook his long mane of grizzled gray hair out of his twisted and scarred face, and began to call out names, his normal eye moving steadily down the list while his magical eye swiveled around, fixing upon each student as he or she answered. Right then, he said, when the last person had declared themselves present. I've had a letter from Professor Lupin about this class. Seems you've had a plenty thorough grounding in attracting dark creatures. You've covered boggarts, redcaps, hinky-punks, grindylows, kappas, and werewolves. Is that right? There was a general murmur of assent. But you're behind. Very behind. On dealing with curses, said Moody. So I'm here to bring you up to scratch on what wizards can do to each other. I've got 1 year to teach you how to deal with dark... What are you saying? What do you... What? Bleh. Bleh. I'm not reading correctly. I've got 1 year to teach you how to deal with dark... What aren't you saying? Ron blurted out. Moody's magical eye spun around to stare at Ron. Ron looked extremely apprehensive, but after a moment Moody smiled, the first time Harry had seen him do so. The effect was to make his heavily scarred face look more twisted and contorted than ever, but it was nevertheless good to know that he ever did anything as friendly as smile. Ron looked deeply relieved. You'll be Arthur Weasley's son, eh? Moody said. Your father got me out of a very tight corner a few days ago. Yeah, I'm staying just the 1 year. Special favor to Dumbledore. 1 year and then back to my quiet retirement. He gave a harsh laugh and then clapped his gnarled hands together. So, straight into it. Curses. They come in many strengths and forms. Now, according to the Ministry of Magic, I'm supposed to teach you counter curses and leave it at that. I'm not supposed to show you what illegal dark curses look like until you're in the 6th year. You're not supposed to be old enough to deal with it until then. But Professor Dumbledore's got a higher opinion of your nerves. He reckons you can cope, and I say, the sooner you know what you're up against, the better. How are you supposed to defend yourselves against something you've never seen? A wizard who's about to put an illegal curse on you isn't going to tell you what he's about to do. He's not going to do it nice and polite in your face. You need to be prepared, you need to be alert and watchful. You need to put that away, Miss Brown, when I'm talking. Lavender jumped and blushed. She had been showing Parvati her completed horoscope under the desk. Apparently Moody's magical eye could see through solid wood, as well as out of the back of his head. So, do any of you know which curses are most heavily punished by wizarding law? Several hands rose tentatively into the air, including Ron's and Hermione's. Moody pointed at Ron, though his magical eye was still fixed on Lavender. Said Ron tentatively. My dad told me about one. Is it called the Imperious Curse or something? Ah, yes, said Moody appreciatively. Your father would know that one. Gave the ministry a lot of trouble at one time, the Imperious Curse. Moody got heavily to his mismatched feet, opened his desk drawer and took out a glass jar. 3 large black spiders were scuttling around inside it. Harry felt Ron recoil slightly next to him. Ron hated spiders. Moody reached into the jar, cut one of the spiders, and held it in the palm of his hand so that they could all see it, and then pointed his wand at it and muttered, Imperio! The spider leapt from Moody's hand on a fine thread of silk and began to swing backward and forward as though on a trapeze. It stretched out its legs rigidly, then took a backflip, breaking the thread and landing on the desk, where it began to cartwheel in circles. Moody jerked his wand and the spider rose onto 2 of its hind legs and went into what was unmistakably a tap dance. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Moody. Think it's funny, do you? He growled. You'd like it, would you, if I did it to you? The laughter died away almost instantly. The movie does this really well. The movie, makes it all, fun and games, and then, he says, yeah, it's fun, isn't it? And then he tries to make the spider kill itself. And it's yeah, it's not fun. And the music gets dark and the scene gets dark. They do it so well. Total control, said Moody quietly as the spider balled itself up and began to roll over and over. I can make it jump out of the window, drown itself, throw itself down one of your throats. Ron gave an involuntary shudder. Years back, there were a lot of witches and wizards being controlled by the Imperious Curse, said Moody, and Harry knew he was talking about the days in which Voldemort had been all-powerful. Some job for the ministry trying to sort out who was being forced to act and who was acting of their own free will. The Imperious Curse can be fought, and I'll be teaching you how. See, I wish that was in the movie. I think that's far more important. But it takes real strength of character, and not everyone's got it. Better avoid being hit with it if you can. Constant vigilance, he barked, and everyone jumped. Moody picked up the somersaulting spider and threw it back into the jar. Anyone else know one? Another illegal curse? Hermione's hand flew into the air again, and so, to Harry's slight surprise, did Neville's. The only class in which Neville usually volunteered information was herbology, which was easily his best subject. Neville looked surprised at his own daring. Yes, said Moody, his magical eye rolling right over to fix on Neville. There's one, the Cruciatus Curse, said Neville in a small but distinct voice. Moody was looking very intently at Neville, this time with both eyes. Your name's Longbottom, he said, his magical eyes swooping down to check the register again. He knows. Neville nodded nervously, but Moody made no further inquiries. Turning back to the class at large, he reached into the jar for the next spider and placed it upon the desktop, where it remained motionless, apparently too scared to move. Yeah, I would be. Cruciatus curse, said Moody. Needs to be a bit bigger for you to get the idea, he said, pointing his wand at the spider. Ingorgio. The spider swelled. It was now larger than a tarantula. Abandoning all pretense, Ron pushed his chair backward as far away from Moody's desk as possible. Moody raised his wand again, pointed it at the spider, and muttered, Crucio! At once the spider's legs bent in upon its body. It rolled over and began to twitch horribly, rocking from side to side. No sound came from it, but Harry was sure that if it could have given voice, it would have been screaming. Moody did not remove his wand, and the spider started to shudder and jerk more violently. Stop it! Hermione said shrilly. Harry looked around at her. She was looking not at the spider, but at Neville, and Harry followed her gaze, saw that Neville's hands were clenching upon the desk in front of him, his knuckles white, his eyes wide and horrified. Moody raised his wand. The spider's legs relaxed, but it continued to twitch. Reducio, Moody muttered, and the spider shrank back to its proper size. He put it back into the jar. Pain, said Moody softly. You don't need thumbscrews or knives to torture someone if you can perform the Cruciatus curse. That one was very popular once, too. Right. Anyone know any others? Harry looked around. From the looks on everyone's faces, he guessed that they were all wondering what was going to happen to the last spider. Hermione's hand shook slightly as, for the third time, she raised it into the air. Yes, Moody, looking at her. Avada Kedavra, Hermione whispered. Several people looked uneasily around at her, including Ron. Ah, said Moody, another slight smile twisting his lopsided mouth. Yes, the last and worst. Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. He put his hand into the glass jar, and almost as though he knew what was coming, the third spider scuttled frantically around the bottom of the jar, trying to evade Moody's fingers. But he trapped it and placed it upon the desktop. It started to scuttle frantically across the wooden surface. Moody raised his wand, and Harry felt a sudden thrill of foreboding. Avada Kedavra, Moody roared. There was a flash of blinding green light and a rushing sound as though a vast invisible something was soaring through the air. Instantaneously the spider rolled over onto its back, unmarked but unmistakably dead. Several of the students stifled cries. Ron had thrown himself backward and almost toppled off his seat as the spider skidded toward him. The movie does this so good. Oh, when the camera focuses on the death of the spider and then it unfocuses to focus on Harry in the background. Oh, it's so good. It's cinematic magic. Whew, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Moody swept the dead spider off the desk onto the floor. What? Don't put it on the floor. Someone has to clean that. Filch has to clean that. Jerk. Does Filch have a T in his name? I don't think he does. I had to think about that. Not nice, he said calmly. Not pleasant. And there's no counter-curse. There's no blocking it. Only one known person has ever survived it. And he's sitting right in front of me. Oh. Harry felt his face redden as Moody's eyes, both of them, looked into his own. He could feel everyone else looking around at him, too. Harry stared at the blank blackboard as though fascinated by it, but not really seeing it at all. So that was how his parents had died. Exactly like that spider. Had they been unblemished and unmarked, too? Had they simply seen the flash of green light and heard the rush of speeding death before life was wiped from their bodies? Harry had been picturing his parents' death over and over again for 3 years now, ever since he'd found out they had been murdered, ever since he'd found out what had happened that night. Wormtail betrayed his parents' whereabouts to Voldemort, who had come to find them at their cottage. How Voldemort had killed Harry's father first. How James Potter had tried to hold him off, while he shouted at his wife to take Harry and run. Voldemort had advanced on Lily Potter and told her to move aside so that he could kill Harry. How she had begged him to kill her instead, refused to stop shielding her son, and so Voldemort had murdered her too before turning his wand on Harry. Harry knew these details because he had heard his parents' voices when he had fought the Dementors last year, for that was the terrible power of the Dementors, to force their victims to relive the worst memories of their lives and drown, powerless, in their own despair. Moody was speaking again from a great distance, it seemed to Harry. With a massive effort, he pulled himself back to the present and listened to what Moody was saying. Avada Kedavra is a curse that needs a powerful bit of magic behind it. You could all get your wands out now and point them at me and say the words, and I doubt I'd get so much as a nosebleed. But that doesn't matter. I'm not here to teach you how to do it. Thank goodness. Now, if there's no counter curse, why am I showing you? Because you've got to know. You've got to appreciate what the worst is. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're facing it. Constant vigilance, he roared, and the whole class jumped again. Now, those 3 curses, Avada Kedavra, Imperius, and Cruciatus, are known as the Unforgivable Curses. The use of any one of them on a fellow human being is enough to earn a life sentence in Azkaban. That's what you're up against. That's what I've got to teach you to fight. You need preparing. You need arming. But most of all, you need to practice constant, never-ceasing vigilance. Get out your quills. Copy this down. They spent the rest of the lesson taking notes on each of the unforgivable curses. No one spoke until the bell rang, but when Moody had dismissed them and they had left the classroom, a torrent of talk burst forth. Most people were discussing the curses in odd voices. Did you see it twitch? And when he killed it, just like that. They were talking about the lesson, Harry thought, as though it had been some sort of spectacular show, but he hadn't found it very entertaining, and nor, it seemed, had Hermione. Hurry up, she said tensely to Harry and Ron. Not the ruddy library again, said Ron. No, said Hermione curtly, pointing up a side passage. Neville. Neville was standing alone, halfway up the passage, staring at the stone wall opposite him with the same horrified, wide-eyed look he had worn when Moody had demonstrated the Cruciatus curse. Neville? Hermione said gently. Neville looked around. Oh, hello, he said, his voice much higher than usual. Interesting lesson, wasn't it? I wonder what's for dinner. I'm starving, are you? Neville, are you all right? Said Hermione. Oh, yes, I'm fine. Neville gabbled in the same unnaturally high voice. Very interesting dinner. I mean, lesson. What's for eating? Ron gave Harry a startled look. Neville, what? But an odd clunking noise sounded behind them, and they turned to see Professor Moody limping toward them. All 4 of them fell silent, watching him apprehensively, but when he spoke it was in a much lower and gentler growl than they had yet heard. It's all right, Sonny, he said to Neville. Why don't you come up to my office? Come on, we can have a cup of tea. Neville looked even more frightened at the prospect of tea with Moody. He neither moved nor spoke. Moody turned his magical eye upon Harry. You all right, are you, Potter? Yes, said Harry, almost defiantly. Moody's blue eye quivered slightly in its socket as it surveyed Harry. Then he said, You've got to know. It seems harsh, maybe, but you've got to know. No point pretending. Well, come on, Longbottom. I've got some books that might interest you. Yeah, no, he's absolutely 100% right, and I love it. Neville looked pleadingly at Harry, Ron, and Hermione, but they didn't say anything, so Neville had no choice but to allow himself to be steered away, one of Moody's gnarled hands on his shoulder. What was that about? Said Ron, watching Neville and Moody turn the corner. I don't know, said Hermione, looking pensive. Some lesson, though, eh? Said Ron to Harry as they set off for the Great Hall. Fred and George were right, weren't they? He really knows his stuff, Moody, doesn't he? When he did Avada Kedavra, the way that spire just died, just snuffed it, right? But Ron fell suddenly silent at the look on Harry's face, and didn't speak again until they reached the Great Hall, when he said he supposed they had better make a start on Professor Trelawney's predictions tonight, since they would take hours. Hermione did not join in with Harry and Ron's conversation during dinner, but ate fiercely fast, and they left for the library again. Harry and Ron walked back to Gryffindor Tower, and Harry, who had been thinking of nothing else all through dinner, now raised the subject of the unforgivable curses himself. Wouldn't Moody and Dumbledore be in trouble with the Ministry if they knew we'd seen the curses? Harry asked as they approached the fat lady. Yeah, probably, said Ron. But Dumbledore's always done things his way, hasn't he? And Moody's been getting in trouble for years, I reckon. Attacks first and asks questions later. Look at his dustbins. Balderdash. The fat lady swung forward to reveal the entrance hall, and they climbed into the Gryffindor common room, which was crowded and noisy. Shall we get our divination stuff, then? Said Harry. I suppose, Ron groaned. They went up to the dormitory to fetch their books and charts, to find Neville there alone, sitting on his bed, reading. He looked a good deal calmer than at the end of Moody's lesson, though still not entirely normal. His eyes were rather red. Oh, poor sweet Neville. You all right, Neville? Harry asked him. Oh, yes, said Neville. I'm fine, thanks. Just reading this book Professor Moody lent me. He held up the book, Magical Water Plants of the Mediterranean. Apparently, Professor Sprout told Professor Moody I'm really good at herbology, Neville said. There was a faint note of pride in his voice that Harry had rarely heard there before. He thought I'd like it. I know you would. Telling Neville what Professor Sprout had said, Harry thought, had been a very tactful way of cheering Neville up. For Neville very rarely heard that he was good at anything. It was the sort of thing Professor Lupin would have done. Yeah. Harry and Neville took their copies of Unfogging the Future back down to the common room. Found a table and set to work on their predictions for the coming month. An hour later they had made very little progress, though their table was littered with bits of parchment bearing sums and symbols, and Harry's brain was as fogged as though it had been filled with the fumes from Professor Trelawney's fire. I haven't got a clue what this lot's supposed to mean, he said, staring down at a long list of calculations. You know, said Ron, whose hair was on end because of all the times he had run his fingers through it in frustration, I think it's back to the old divination standby. What? Make it up? Yeah, said Ron, sweeping the jumble of scrawled notes off the table, dipping his pen into some ink and starting to write. Next Monday, he said as he scribbled, I am likely to develop a cough, owing to the unlucky conjunction of Mars and Jupiter. He looked up at Harry. You know her. Just put in loads of misery. She'll lap it up. Right, said Harry, crumbling up his first attempt and lobbing it over the heads of a group of chattering first-years into the fire. Oh, are we going to talk to Sirius in this chapter? That's why he's not responding to the letter. He wants to do it personally. Right? Is that this one? No, he gets a letter. Anyway, I thought that was this chapter. Anyway. Okay, on Monday, I will be in danger of, burns. Yeah, you will be, said Ron darkly. We're seeing the Scroots again on Monday. Okay, Tuesday, I'll, lose a treasured possession, said Harry, who was flicking through Unfogging the Future for ideas. Good one, said Ron, copying it down. Maybe we should keep track of these, see if these actually happen. Because of, Mercury. Why don't you get stabbed in the back by someone you thought was a friend? That one actually happens, though. Oh, no! I'm trying to think. Does Ron... I mean, if you count Harry as a valuable possession, I mean, you know, these might actually come true eventually. Spooky. Okay. Yeah, cool, said Harry, scribbling it down, because Venus is in the 12th house. And on Wednesday, I think I'll come off worse than a fight. Ah, I was going to have a fight. Okay, I'll lose a bet. Yeah, you'll be betting I'll win my fight. They're very good at this. They continued to make up predictions, which grew steadily more tragic for another hour, while the common room around them slowly emptied as people went up to bed. Crookshanks wandered over to them, leapt lightly into an empty chair, and stared inscrutably at Harry, rather as Hermione might look if she knew they weren't doing their homework properly. staring around the room, trying to think of a kind of misfortune he hadn't yet used. Harry saw Fred and George sitting together against the opposite wall, heads together, quills out, poring over a single piece of parchment. It was most unusual to see Fred and George hidden away in a corner and working silently. They usually liked to be in the thick of things, and the noisy center of attention. There was something secretive about the way they were working on the piece of parchment, and Harry was reminded of how they had sat together writing something back at the burrow. He had thought then that it was another order form for Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, but it didn't look like that this time. If it had been, they would surely have let Lee Jordan in on the joke. He wondered whether it had anything to do with entering the Triwizard Tournament. I think it's a letter to Ludo Bagman, actually. As they won the bet that they made against Ludo Bagman, but he paid them in leprechaun gold. Naughty, naughty. All right. As Harry watched, George shook his head at Fred, scratched out something with his quill, and said in a very quiet voice that nevertheless carried across the almost deserted room, "No, that sounds like we're accusing him. Got to be careful." Yeah, it's a letter to Ludo Bagman. Then George looked over and saw Harry watching him. Harry grinned and quickly returned to his predictions. He didn't want George to think he was eavesdropping. Shortly after that, the twins rolled up their parchment and said good night and went off to bed. Fred and George had been gone 10 minutes or so when the portrait hole opened and Hermione climbed into the common room carrying a sheaf of parchment in one hand and a box, whose contents rattled as she walked in the other. Crookshanks arched his back, purring. "Hello," she said. "I've just finished." "So have I," said Ron triumphantly, throwing down his quill. Hermione sat down, laid the thing she was carrying in an empty armchair, and pulled Ron's predictions toward her. Excuse me. "Not going to have a very good month, are you?" she said sardonically, as Crookshanks curled up in her lap. "Ah, well, at least I'm forewarned." Ron yawned. "I can't. Ron, you gotta stop. You gotta knock that off, man. You're killing me here." "You seem to be drowning twice," said Hermione. Oh, am I?" said Ron, peering down at his predictions. "I'd better change one of them to getting trampled by a rampaging hippogriff." "Don't you think it's a bit obvious you've made these up?" said Hermione. "How dare you!" said Ron in mock outrage. "We've been working like house elves here." Hermione raised her eyebrows. "It's just an expression," said Ron hastily. Harry laid down his quill, too, having just finished predicting his own death by decapitation. "What's in the box?" he asked, pointing at it. Don't ask what's in the box." "Don't do it, man. Don't do it." "Funny you should ask," said Hermione, with a nasty look at Ron. She took off the lid and showed them the contents. Inside were about 50 badges, all of different colors, but all bearing the same letters, S-P-E-W. "Spew?" said Harry, picking up a badge and looking at it. "What's this about?" "Not spew," said Hermione impatiently. "It's S-P-E-W. Stands for the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare." "Never heard of it," said Ron. "Well, of course you haven't," said Hermione briskly. "I've only just started it." "Yeah?" said Ron in a mild surprise. "How many members have you got?" "Well, if you two join, 3, said Hermione. "And you think we want to walk around wearing badges saying spew, do you?" said Ron. S-P-E-W, said Hermione hotly. "I was going to put stop the outrageous abuse of our fellow magical creatures and campaign for a change in their legal status, but it wouldn't fit, so that's the heading of our manifesto." She brandished a sheaf of parchment at them. "I've been researching it thoroughly in the library. Elf enslavement goes back centuries. I can't believe no one's done anything about it before now." "Hermione, open your ears," said Ron loudly. "They like it. They like being enslaved." "Our short-term aims," said Hermione, speaking even more loudly than Ron and acting as though she hadn't heard a word, "are to secure house elves fair wages and working conditions. Our long-term aims include changing the law about non-wand use and trying to get an elf into the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures because they're shockingly underrepresented." "And how do we do all this?" Harry asked. "We start by recruiting members," said Hermione happily. "I thought 2 sickles to join, that buys a badge, and the proceeds can fund our leaflet campaign. You're treasurer, Ron. I've got you a collecting tin upstairs, and Harry your secretary, so you might want to write down everything I'm saying now as a record of our first meeting. Oh my goodness, Hermione, please. She's so... it's not that I don't appreciate what she wants to do. She's way too ambitious. I think that's the word, ambitious. And pushing her friends into it without even asking them, it's a bit much. There was a pause in which Hermione beamed at the pair of them. She all expects them to be like, yeah, let's do this. And Harry sat, torn between exasperation at Hermione and amusement at the look on Ron's face. The silence was broken, not by Ron, who in any case looked as though he was temporarily dumbstruck, but by a soft tap-tap on the window. Harry looked across the now empty common room and saw, illuminated by the moonlight, a snowy owl perched on the windowsill. "Hedwig!" he shouted, and he launched himself out of his chair and across the room to pull open the window. Hedwig flew inside, soared across the room, and landed on the table on top of Harry's predictions. "About time," said Harry, hurrying after her. "She's got an answer," said Ron excitedly, pointing at the grubby piece of parchment tied to Hedwig's leg. Harry hastily untied it and sat down to read, whereupon Hedwig fluttered onto his knee, hooting softly, so he didn't use a different owl. "What does it say?" Hermione asked breathlessly. The letter was very short and looked as though it had been scrawled in a great hurry. Harry read it aloud. "Harry, I'm flying north immediately. This news about your scar is the latest in a series of strange rumors that have reached me here. If it hurts again, go straight to Dumbledore. They're saying he's got Mad-Eye out of retirement, which means he's reading the signs, even if no one else is. I'll be in touch soon. My best to Ron and Hermione. Keep your eyes open, Harry. Sirius." Harry looked up at Ron and Hermione, who stared back at him. "He's flying north?" Hermione whispered. "He's coming back?" "Dumbledore's reading what signs?" said Ron, looking perplexed. "Harry, what's up?" For Harry had just hit himself in the forehead with his fist, jolting Hedwig out of his lap. "I shouldn't have told him," Harry said furiously. "What are you on about?" said Ron in surprise. "It's made him think he's got to come back," said Harry, now slamming his fist on the table so that Hedwig landed on the back of Ron's chair, hooting indignantly. "Coming back because he thinks I'm in trouble, and there's nothing wrong with me, and I haven't got anything for you," Harry snapped at Hedwig, who was clicking her beak unexpectedly. "You'll have to go up to the owlery if you want food." Hedwig gave him an extremely offended look and took off for the open window, cuffing him around the head with her outstretched wing as she went. Serves him right. Don't treat a lady like that. I love Hedwig so much. She has such personality for someone that doesn't talk. "Harry," Hermione began in a pacifying sort of voice. "I'm going to bed," said Harry shortly. "See you in the morning." Upstairs in the dormitory, he pulled on his pajamas and got into his four-poster, but he didn't feel remotely tired. If Sirius came back and got caught, it would be Harry's fault. Why hadn't he kept his mouth shut? A few seconds' pain and he'd had to blab. If he had just had the sense to keep it to himself. He heard Ron come up into the dormitory a short while later, but did not speak to him. For a long time Harry lay staring up at the dark canopy of his bed. The dormitory was completely silent, and had he been less preoccupied, Harry could have realized that the absence of Neville's unusual snores meant that he was not the only one lying awake. That's the end of Chapter 14. Things get really exciting next week. Chapter 15, Beauxbatons and Durmstrang. We're going to meet our new friends. Our friends from the north and our friends from France. And the chapter after that is going to be The Goblet of Fire. Roll credits. Yay! It's so exciting. Yay! This book is so good, and it's only going to get better. Okay. All right. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to chat in the comment section. I respond to those. And click the like button. That's really helpful. It tells YouTube that you like the video, and YouTube is more likely to share it with other people the more likes that it gets. If you like more content like this, click subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking on the bell. Once you click subscribe, I will be going live next week. If you want to know when, follow me on Twitter or look out for the the schedule that I post on YouTube. My link to Twitter is in the description. Also in the description is my Patreon if you'd like to support me as a content creator, or if you'd like to read my writing, because I am a writer. I have short stories and the like on there. If you become a patron, you can read everything that's on there, but if you don't, you can read some of the free stuff that's on there. I will be posting a video shortly, so look out for that. And I also have a TikTok and an Instagram. Both are linked in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical evening. Bye-bye.